Hello, and welcome to the Creating Abundance podcast, where we explore pathways to radiant health, wealth, and happiness. I'm your host, Alana Cahoon. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Evelyn C. Rysdyk, once described as part storyteller, part minister, part scientist, and part fairy godmother. Evelyn is a renowned shamanic teacher and the author of several powerful books, including my favorite, The Norse Shaman, Spirit Walking, A Spirit Walker's Guide to Shamanic Tools, The Nepalese Shamanic Path, and Shamanic Creativity. With over 35 years of experience guiding people to discover their true power, Evelyn brings a wealth of wisdom to help us understand today's focus of an abundance of support. Welcome, Evelyn.
Oh, thanks very much, Alana. This will be fun, I promise the listeners and you.
Absolutely. I expect none the less. I
All
mean,
right,
we got the
good.
shamanic vibes going. Lots of
We do.
magic.
We do.
Lots of magic and power. So why don't you share with us this description of being part storyteller, minister, scientist, and fairy
Fairy
godmother,
godmother,
the
yeah.
best part.
Well, I was blessed with really wonderful elders when I was a little girl. And I had grandmothers on both sides, grandfathers on both sides, a great grandmother who was my best friend when I was a little kid, and all of her sisters. So there, we were thick with with gray-haired people who were really nurturing. It wasn't like, oh, let the kids be somewhere else kind of person. They were all very clear about, first of all, if you were quiet, you could be with them all the time. And secondly, they were brilliant storytellers.
Mm,
And you think about my great grandmother telling stories about her mother, father, and grandparents. I had 100 years worth of stories that I was filled with when I was little. And it was stories about old New York, 100 years prior to my birth in 1955. And that sense of them sharing that in a very human way. They were very good at laughing and also telling stories that brought tears to their eyes. That sort of wove a container for me. I'm the eldest child, so I got more of their time, I think, than the next two got. And that felt so deeply nurturing to me.
yeah.
And I remember some of those stories still. And that was a long time ago now. So that foundation for me really provided, first of all, an understanding of the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
To, don't just give the answer, but weave it in something that somebody's going to remember, right? And then to recognize that storytelling, that being with people that are willing to reveal themselves to a degree and and support you to understand the world that they came from,
Yeah.
that was a kind of wealth for me. We were a blue collar family. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but
Yeah.
that support felt like abundance. It felt like all kinds of riches because
Yeah.
each one had a different way to tell stories. Each one, they take turns putting me on their knee and tell stories. And that, I mean, I still hold some of the ones that are particularly amusing. They remind me of how delightful those people were. And as I aged up as a child, they would be lost because they were much older than I, and so that there were a series of funerals over the course of my early life.
Mm,
But I knew that the treasure that they gave me wouldn't go away. And the treasure was that connection with somebody who was just little, you know, that's the littlest I ever were. So that idea that I was held not just physically, but held as a repository for all that they had learned
yeah.
felt to me like, like a gift of Midas. It was that tremendous, first of all, being honored that somebody would actually tell you their stories in that way. And
Hmm.
then to recognize that it was always enfolded with love.
Oh,
And yeah, oh is right. But that support, I think if you don't have that kind of support when you're young, you've got to find ways to get it when you're older. Because that support, I think, helps to weave us in ways that are tangible and intangible. They weave us into, I think, a sort of stable human being. That's sort of a practical way of looking at it. But it also helps us to understand that life will not be a smooth path,
yeah.
because they told stories during the Depression, how that was like. They told all kinds of ups and downs, and always with some laughter, because they know they had survived it and they had learned something powerful in that surviving it. And that's what they wanted to share.
That's really important. That's beautiful. And that, first of all, what a blessing to have a supportive family. And I love how you talk about their sharing of their wisdom, their stories with you. That's the abundance, right? That creates an abundance of support and family love, which is, I think, one of the most important aspects of abundance. I just spent the morning with my two cousins, Christine and Pat, and so very similar stories, learning stories from my aunts and uncles, and yeah, that's beautiful. Very, very nice, very inspirational.
Well, the part that where the rub comes for many people is they didn't have that.
Mm,
They maybe were the last of six children, and they ran out of stories by the time they got to them, or they just did not come from people who felt confident about the life that they had and didn't feel maybe confident enough to tell stories about it to their children. And that, while it feels like a deficit, can be filled. And that filling can happen in lots of different ways. But the two that I always call my defaults are being out in nature and remembering that you are, in essence, you are a story being told by nature. You are woven of nature, and you are a living part of it, moving through your life as the story that nature wants to tell it with your body and with your personality. And thinking about ourselves that way is really one of those things where you go, what?
yeah.
But it really is true. We are just in the same way, the chipmunk that comes to the bird feeder or the bears in the woods or whatever. We are stories woven by nature that then elaborate on that story over the course of our lives, with our adventures, with our mistakes, with, some of the harrowing things we may have done when we were like, 15. And recognizing that we are in the process of living out a story that we're also writing with our lives. And
Yeah.
that I think, in conjunction with being in nature and recognizing that everything out there, first of all, is not a thing, it's a who. The trees are whos, the animals are whos, the river down the street here is a who. When we recognize that they're telling their story too. The river has different parts of its story when it rains. It has different parts of its story when it freezes up in the winter. And if we connect ourselves to that and recognize that we have our own story that we're living out, and we get to rewrite anything as we go along, like, oh, well, I mean, let me add something there. That helps us to recognize that we're really being held all the time. When we, as human beings, forget that we're actually part of nature, then it's almost like the bottom drops out, like when somebody is hung, where they just and down you go,
Yeah.
because you've unplugged yourself with that perception from all the support that is around you.
Right. So, Evelyn, you're talking, it's interesting. You're weaving nature into the story, which is really, in my mind and experience, the foundation of shamanism. So, can you share with the audience? I'm sure there are many people who do know what it is and some who are curious. And you are a renowned expert in the field. And so, please share with the audience what shamanism is to you and how it relates to nature and everyone's story and a supportive abundance.
Oh, all right, I'll do that all in 2 sentences.
Pick
Here
one
we
of
go.
those.
So everything around us is alive. When we take on that pair of glasses, compare it to my glasses here. You put on the glasses where you teach yourself that everything around you is alive. It may only be a boulder that was rolled here by the glaciers. It's alive. It has an essence that can be communicated with when you expand your awareness. And indigenous people have understood this for millennia, and our deep ancestors, no matter if you're a pale face like me, whatever your ancestors looked like, back far enough, they were expanding consciousness all the time. You're wired for it. Every one of us is wired for expanded states of awareness. And when our deep ancestors were sitting around fires, and imagine fires in a really dark place. You know, you have a bonfire that you're sitting around to keep warm, and it is so dark that you would not recognize your familiar constellations, because the stars are just way more than we can ever see in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And the fire is making everything around you close, strobing. And it strobes at the exact same rate as journey drumming. So everything around you is strobing to 4 to 4.5 pulses a second. And our brains turn on that part of us that is able to expand awareness when we experience that rhythm, whether it be visually or auditorily, or we're chanting or we're dancing to that rhythm. And so there is, and I cannot remember the man's name right now, he's a PhD from the UK. He believes that that was part of us being able to accelerate the capacity of our brain, because people were getting information at night to help them solve the problems of the daytime.
Yeah. And when you say at night, do you mean in our dream worlds?
Uh, it could be in the dream worlds after, but you have these, anybody who has a fireplace even can do this, where you have sort of answers to your questions, kind of all of a sudden they come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or something that has been troubling you sort of fades away. And it's that shift that happens in our brain when we're in a journey state, the shamanic journey state, which is that expanded state of awareness. Excuse me. It's ragweed season here.
Here too. I get it.
Okay. So we experience 4 different brainwaves simultaneously: alpha, theta, delta, and gamma, which is the highest possible brainwave you can have. That combination turns on things like imagination, your capacity to innovate. So maybe that's how we change the shapes of our tools. You have that resting state of delta, which helps you to just be able to receive, and then gamma is one of the highest brain waves you can have. So your brain is really experiencing the world completely differently under the influence of that rhythm. And that's when it's easier, just in the same way you can do things in dreams that you can't really do in ordinary reality when
Mm-hmm.
you're awake. When you're in that state in a journey, you have the capacity to then interact with the world around you as who's instead of its.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And for the audience who is not familiar with shamanism, um, journeying in shamanism is that you do listen to this rhythmic drum and you go into a transcendent state. And there's a lot more to it. That's really cool and fun. Get some of Evelyn's books and read up on them, and maybe you'll discover that you have shaman within yourself. To me, the shaman really is a healer, right? The shaman is a natural healer. And you also said something beautiful about our ancestors. All of our ancestors had this uh, uh, and more expansive consciousness. And and what, so there's a few things here, and just pick whatever you want to follow up on. But how did we stamp that out so that it's unusual and for people, and that we're almost afraid of it, and close the door to that intuitive, spiritual nature of communicating with nature and the spirit world?
I can give you an example that sociologists found out a while back. It's probably several decades ago now. There are two tribes that are related in Africa, the Aka and the Ngandu, and one chose to remain a hunter-gatherer society, and the other did rudimentary farming. What the sociologists found out was the children that were raised by the hunter-gatherers were far more healthy psychologically because they were never put down as babies. They were passed from one elder to another to be carried through the environment. Food was always available. You could always find something to eat. You knew where the water sources. I'm from New York, so I have to be very careful when I say water source. Otherwise, it sort of mushes together. They felt as though they were being nurtured not only by the people, but by the environment itself. So that edge that we have between the human world and the natural world wasn't there. For the farmers, mothers had to set their babies down in order to do what they needed to do in their field. And there was anxiety because if you don't have enough rain, if, something comes and ravages your crops, you don't have food. And the difference between those two got expanded through time because we went from farmers and then we started to do industrial work and on and on and on. And we became further and further away from that nurturance that we had as a what's so, as my partner says. It's just the way it is. Everything was there for us to not only survive, but to thrive, because those people would sing as they were walking through, unless they were hunting. And that joy of being out is like, okay, we're going to go gather roots today, or we need more bedding, or whatever it is. Everybody participated, and they only took what they needed.
Yeah.
Now, you compare that to the societies that we have now in the 21st century, it's a very different experience. And there's, I think, more of a sense of alienation from each other as well as from the natural, in connection to the natural world, because we've lost that understanding of the fact that we're woven into it, as I started with earlier, that we have this intrinsic connection to nature because we're made of it and we can't live without it. Astronauts don't go up with, just a whim. They have to have all this kind of special garments and, all this stuff that helps them to survive. They need to bring their own oxygen, bring their own water. It's here, but it's not up there where they are. So that idea that we still live in a nurturing place, and if we begin to think about it again as a nurturing place, really turn off the part of us that is alienated, which we can do. We're very good at that, actually. We can turn that off for a while and sink back into our place as upright, hairless primates who happen to be social in our nature, and begin to treat ourselves, others of our species, as well as the natural environment, as this whole that holds us. And that, to me, is the kind of deepest sense of support that we can have in this time when we
Yeah.
step back in.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Um, Curious. what, how did you know? What called you? When were you called to enter into the world of being a shaman and a teacher and a healer and an author for that matter?
Yes, because I was a visual artist before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was an interesting piece.
Oh, no, that's right. You designed this, didn't you?
I did, and the illustrations inside.
Oh, they're
I
beautiful.
still have to do that.
Really powerful. Great book.
Thank you. So, in the very early 90s, late 80s, I was in advertising in New York. And people started to get the companies that we had as clients started to get computers. And they thought at that point they didn't need advertising agencies anymore. They could just produce their own ads, which of course was a horror show. But what I found was the profession that I had at that time was no longer respected, and I felt as though I was not sure what to do next.
Mm,
That, when you have something that has fed you and you've felt nurtured by the process, it was a good profession to be in initially, and that life sort of pulls that
yeah.
trapdoor open on you. And I became depressed, and I had not been depressed in that way ever in my life prior. And so I did all the dutifully good things, go find a therapist. I needed medication to sleep because I had racing thoughts. But as a stubborn Taurus, I decided I wasn't getting well fast enough. So I said, there's got to be something else that I could add to this mix. And back then in New York City, they had a great big fat catalog of hundreds of things that you could do to improve your life, most of which I had never heard of. And one of them was Michael Harner was still teaching then, and he was teaching live the way of the shaman. And I had read his book when it came out, probably in 80, 81, and experimented on my own. But I thought, oh, let me go see the author. That would be a good change of pace. He told stories for the whole first day.
Yeah.
And that was delightful because he was telling stories and he made himself laugh. And so it was a lightness to it that felt very familiar to me. And finally, we get to Journey. So now there's 150 people lying on the floor in a dance studio in Soho. And he's standing in the middle with his drum and gives us the intent to go to the low world and meet a power animal. And it's like, okay. And that's a power animal is an animal ally that can support you not only in your journeys, but also support you in ordinary reality.
Hmm.
So, we put on blindfolds, we're laying on the floor, and he starts to drum. And of course, I had practiced this a little bit the decade before, and I can see in the distance a polar bear. And I'm thinking, oh, I made this up because I've always had this real connection to polar bears. And but I follow through, I walk closer and closer and closer. And this polar bear has a brown nose, which they don't have brown noses. And the polar bear speaks to me in English and says, you didn't make that up. And I was like, okay, and then whatever this is, I must do more of this. Because I was completely taken aback in the best possible way. I call that the unrest cure. They have these rest cures when people are very ill and they go someplace quiet. I needed
Yeah.
an unrest cure. I needed something to just shake and go, oh, I'm back. And that worked in that way. So
Yeah.
I journeyed for probably every day for probably 6 months just to feel really comfortable with the process. And then I thought, I need to do more of this. And so that's what got me started in exploring not only journeying, but how the shamans of old and today assist people to bring them back to their own wholeness, their own fullness,
Oh, isn't
and
that beautiful?
and amplify that as well. Because if you also teach them not to, help people feel whole, but then give them that gift of being able to journey so
Yeah.
that they can have their own sense of that expansion. I mean,
Mm,
secretly, I think this is a great way to change a culture, you know,
interesting.
because
Yeah.
you're giving people the keys to do those explorations on their own, and find that expansive sense of joy, of possibility, that you don't run into any dead ends in a journey. There's always some way that you can have that one lead to the next one and learn something, and then you bring it back and you implement it, and then you go, oh, I want to know more about that. And it starts this kind of fizz. You put the fizz back in life. Instead of being flat soda anymore, you get your fizz back.
Hmm.
And once we get our fizz back, we're much more likely to use the the way journeying changes us. So over time, it improves creativity, imagination, the capacity to do innovation, the ability to negotiate with other people. It improves memory, your learning capacity, and a whole bunch of other things. So your brain, because it's wired for this, is hungry for that experience because it puts things in there that may have been little, and then they expand them. So your creativity becomes, oh, I can't really draw without a ruler, I can't make a straight line. And then suddenly it's like, no, I think I want to take a watercolor class. You get these expansions, these enhancements, I call them, that I know something similar was going on with those ancestors around the fire.
Hmm.
And that in and of itself is a healing when you feel like, wow, I don't feel as limited any longer.
Yeah.
That there are doorways everywhere.
Hmm.
And all I have to do is rattle a door handle and see if I can get in. And that helps to put back in place what you might not have had as an experience when you were a child. In some ways, learning to journey is part of one of the ways shamans heal is to make sure that your spirit is intact in your body. And if you've picked up anybody else's energy, to remove that first, so your own energy comes back and it gets tucked in there and it's safe in your body where it belongs.
Yeah.
But in some ways, that shift inside of us is also providing that same kind of support, because suddenly you have this filling up, maybe to overflowing, of these capacities that you had only used a little bit of, and now, wow, they're bigger. I feel like my memory is better, or gosh, I'm so feeling so creative, I don't know where to start. And that, I imagine that to me is that connection to those deep ancestors who nobody taught them about shamanism. They were experienced around the fire and they learned they could use that state to maybe solve a problem they've been struggling with.
Yeah.
And how marvelous that we can replicate that for this time period and awaken capacities that in us that we need now. We need to be able to work together across all things that we think separate us.
Mhm.
Because unless we pull together as our 8.4 billion population, we will not be able to solve the problems that are present on our world in the climate and different
Yeah.
different areas that really have been so changed that they can no longer support the life that they did. And when you are in that different state of awareness where it's like the blinders are gone, you
Right.
start to see what connects us, not only as human beings, but to everything else around us. We're I think, what is it,
Mhm.
2% difference in our DNA from us and chimpanzees. It's only 2% difference. And our whole collective, I think the largest distance we have between us is somewhere between 10 and 18 uh, generations. So your 10th cousin or your 18th cousin. No one is not related to you.
That's really interesting. That's something for everyone to listen and take away with them. Um, yeah, so for me and my training in shamanism and experience and um, practicing, the experience of journeying is a form of meditation, and where you go into such a beautiful, deep, transcendent state, And it is so creative. So you are using your imagination and you're opening yourself up to these beautiful worlds. And so you shared with us one experience that people can try, which is age old, sit around the campfire or in your own home or wherever, look into a fireplace, and just that those flames and can really start to help you unblock whatever is blocking you from accessing your inner wisdom to that answer. And the drumming, shamanic drumming, is a very rhythmic drumming, which is so beautiful and very similar. uh, Anything like that can help you to just come out of the chatter in your head and disengage with the whirlwind, and instead realize, oh, there are trees out there. Oh, it's raining. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that cool? Wow, how does that work? To remove us a bit from this technology that allows us to do what we're doing right now. But that's so important. So, is there anything else that you can share to the audience as we're starting to wrap up, that they can even practice themselves to bring themselves more into this state, or any of your books or work that you can suggest that might help people understand this world better and how to practice effectively and safely and open that creativity, that creative genius within each and every one of us?
That is a very big ask. So let's see, let's see how much we get done. So
Okay.
uh, I want to suggest uh, a bit of support for all of you, especially those of you who didn't feel as supported when you were young. There is a character in Norse mythology, and she is an unconditionally loving mother, but she's also a shapeshifter. She can change into a wolf. Her children scare all the humans and the deities. So she lives in a place that she's more giant-like than human-like in terms of size. And her name is Angrabota. And her three children are, one is the goddess Hel, who takes care of all of those who have died of old age, in childbirth, in sickness, basically most of our relatives, right? The warriors go either to half go to Freya for her hall, and the other half go to Odin's hall. So that's one, and none of us want to hurry our deaths, so all of us have a little bit of the jim jams when we think about that. Then there is the second child, which is the Midgard serpent. It is rings the world, and when it moves, it gives us earthquakes. Okay, also a little scary, right? And the last one is Fenrir, the giant wolf that will contribute to the end of the world in Norse mythology. So you think about the children, you go, do I really want to connect with the mother? But she is unconditionally loving. She loves the children that everyone else is terrified of. She loves them with all of her heart. And that kind of nurturance, I think, is something that everybody could use, because she's fierce in that she will protect those children.
And
She
so, how do we learn more about her and access her?
So I cannot type it in the chat because it's Old Norse letters, but her name is Angrabota. It's A, N like in Nancy, G, R, B, O, and then a D that looks like it's drunk with a slash through it, and that's like the hard TH, like thought.
Yeah.
So there's a percussive.
So this will be in
And
the
her
show
name.
notes if you'd like to
Yeah.
to learn more.
Yep.
How can people, where are your books, and how can people reach you and reach out to you?
Well, you can reach out at spiritpassagesacademy.com. We have all kinds of goodies that are happening for different kinds of groups that we're putting together. And I know, Alana, you have a link that you can put up in the chat, or you can also put on wherever you're posting your podcasts.
Right.
And in the free event that link will take you to, we'll be doing a guided journey. So for those of you who, I don't know about that journeying thing, that sounds pretty scary, I would be guiding it and taking you on the journey. So that's one way for you to experience a guided journey to get your feet wet and to also meet someone that can be an ally for you as well as Angrabota.
And
So
so this is a gift that all the listeners can access. And again, it will be in the show notes at the wherever you're streaming this from, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or iHeart or Amazon. So that's beautiful. Thank you very much for gifting the listeners and myself with that. I'm gonna jump right on and go journey and feel um, all the blessings that come with that. And your books, are they on Amazon or Barnes and Noble
they
or
are all different places. Amazon,
okay.
Barnes and Noble. We have friends around the world, and they'll say, "I found your book in London. I found your book in Bombay." And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they speak English. Okay, it's all good.
And this is Evelyn Rysdyk, Rysdyk. And then your company is Spirit Passageways, is that correct?
Spirit Passages Academy.
Spirit Passages Academy. Great. Um, and let's see, is there anything else? Any words of wisdom for people to create abundance, supportive abundance in their lives?
What I would suggest is begin to expand your ideas of what abundance is first. You have abundance of love in some people. You have abundance of uh, beautiful aspects of nature. You have an abundance of the capability to witness that and be a part of it. Do you have the abundance that is provided by your senses, by you also your sense of touch, and begin to think about them in that way. Because you'll find after you've ticked them all off that you're actually a lot richer than you thought you were. And all of that makes for what I consider an abundant life. You can step into work, whatever it might be, but that reminds you that, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well. So
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your stories, your guidance. You've given us so many different beautiful ways to tap into abundance. So everyone tune into Evelyn. I believe you've got an online course coming up, or is it a live event?
it's a live event, and you will give them
Yes.
the little address for it, and we'll get
Fantastic.
wonderful fun together.
Fantastic. So, listeners, once again, I encourage you to explore Evelyn's books, her practices. Remember, you're never alone on your journey to radiant health, wealth, and happiness. Until next time, I'm Alana Cahoon, inviting you to keep creating abundance in every area of your life. Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you, listeners.